I moved into a cursed house, and after a few nights, I broke the curse and I was free. When I first moved into the old Victorian house at the edge of Elmwood Street, I was charmed by its towering turrets and intricate, ivy-clad facade. It stood there as if it were a relic of a forgotten age, bearing the whispers of stories long buried. I never imagined that my own story would be added to those whispers, filled with shivers and sleepless nights. The house creaked in a way that was almost musical, settling into the foundation every evening as if it, too, was preparing for rest. But it was on the third night that I began to suspect I wasn't alone. It was subtle at first, things that could be written off as absent-mindedness. A half-full glass of water left on the kitchen table would be found drained, the shower left running when I was certain I had turned it off, and the faint scent of jasmine, sharp and uninvited, would occasionally flood the air. I brushed these incidents off, convincing myself they were part of adjusting to a new home. After all, I was new to town, having moved here to distance myself from the noise of the city and the chaotic memories of a failed engagement. The townsfolk, friendly but secretive, often remarked on how they couldn't believe someone had finally bought the old Elmwood house. They'd chuckle and make vague allusions to the house's character. I smiled politely and didn't press them for details. It wasn't until the first month that I woke to a sound that sent an icicle of fear down my spine. It was a scratching, like fingernails raking against the wood floor, moving slowly, deliberately down the hallway outside my bedroom. I lay there, paralyzed, counting each breath, my ears straining to catch the next noise. The air grew colder, and I felt a strange pressure in my chest, as if the night itself was bearing down on me. When I finally found the courage to get up and swing open the door, the hallway was empty. Moonlight slanted through the window at the far end, casting skeletal shadows that seemed to dance mockingly. My breath misted in front of me, and my heart thudded in my chest. Nothing, just an old house, I told myself, just an old, drafty house. But the next morning, I discovered thin, deep grooves carved into the wood, trailing from my door to the staircase. My pulse quickened as I traced them with a trembling finger. They weren't there before, I was sure of it. Weeks passed, and the house grew bolder in its displays. At night, I'd hear faint whispers just beyond the edge of sleep. They were unintelligible, but their urgency made my skin prickle. Sometimes, I'd hear the laugh of a child, soft and sorrowful, drifting through the walls like a breeze. I called a local repairman to check the ventilation, convinced that maybe wind whistled through some unseen gap. He found nothing amiss, but as he left, he paused in the doorway. "You know, Miss Carter, this house has a story. Be careful," he said, eyes averted as if afraid of what they might see behind me. The following night, I decided to confront whatever had taken up residence in my home. Armed with nothing more than a flashlight and a cross I hadn't thought to carry since childhood, I crept down the stairs when the noises began. This time, it was the sound of light footsteps in the parlor. I approached, flashlight trembling in my hand. The door creaked as I pushed it open. There, in the middle of the room, stood a woman with long, dark hair flowing over a thin white dress that shimmered faintly as if caught in a perpetual breeze. Her back was to me, but she turned slowly when she felt my presence. Her eyes were black as pitch, voids that pulled at the edges of my sanity. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered, her voice hollow and drenched in sadness. The flashlight clattered to the floor as I stumbled back, my limbs heavy with dread. When I blinked, she was gone, replaced by the familiar, silent room. The only evidence of her presence was the overwhelming scent of jasmine. Terrified, I turned to the town's historical society. They welcomed me with thin smiles that turned to worried frowns when I mentioned the Elmwood house. An elderly woman, Mrs. Whitaker, took me aside. "Do you know about the Olivers?" she asked, voice low. I shook my head, trying to mask the fear rising in my throat. She sighed and continued. "In the late 1800s, a woman named Margaret Oliver lived there. She was said to have lost her child to scarlet fever, and some say her grief kept her tethered long after death. No one has lived there for long since. Armed with this knowledge, I returned home, determined to confront whatever spirits lingered. I spent the next few nights leaving offerings of lavender and small candles on the mantel, whispering apologies and prayers into the dark. The house seemed to quiet, as if listening. The chill in the air softened, and for a brief moment, I believed peace had come. But it was only a lull before the storm. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled in the distance, I heard it again, the child's laugh, closer now, echoing down the hallway. My heart thumped erratically as I followed it to the attic stairs, a place I had never dared to explore. The attic door opened with a groan, revealing cobweb-laden furniture and forgotten trinkets. In the center stood a wooden cradle, rocking gently as though an unseen hand were soothing an invisible child. I felt a weight pressed down on me, a mix of grief and dread. Suddenly, the scent of jasmine enveloped me, so strong that my eyes watered. She was taken from me, came Margaret's voice, so close that I turned instinctively. She stood there, eyes glistening with tears that never fell. "I'm sorry," I whispered, choking on my fear and the undeniable empathy for her loss. And just like that, the weight lifted, the air warmed, and the rocking stopped. Margaret's face softened, her figure shimmering until it faded into the dusty air. The house seemed to sigh with her, exhaling years of pain. From that night on, Elmwood House was different. The cold spots disappeared, and the whispers turned to a soothing hum that I sometimes mistook for the wind. The scent of jasmine would return from time to time, but not with menace, only as a reminder that some echoes, even the saddest ones, can find peace. If you liked the video, please leave a like, comment and subscribe for more content like this.